Part 1. The first year of marriage was a watercolor painting come to life. Soft edges, vivid colors, and a beauty that seemed almost too perfect to be real. Emily and I had that kind of connection people wrote songs about. We moved into a modest colonial with white shutters and a crooked mailbox, tucked into a leafy suburb where kids rode bikes past hydrangea bushes, and the biggest crime was an occasional stolen Amazon package. She was a school counselor. Thoughtful. Patient. The kind of person who remembered not just birthdays but the favorite cake of everyone she celebrated. I managed logistics at a regional firm, a job not nearly as romantic but steady and solid, which was how I thought of myself. Those early days had a rhythm. A little dance only we knew. Saturday mornings at the farmer's market. Evenings where we cooked elaborate meals and ate by candlelight, even when we were too exhausted to appreciate the effort. And notes, so many notes. She'd tuck them into my wallet or leave them under my coffee mug. Proud of you. Can't wait to see you tonight. You make me feel safe. I saved every one. Our wedding photos lined the hallway. Emily in her lace dress, wind-tousled hair falling into her eyes. Me, grinning like I'd won a prize. In a way, I had. Or at least, it felt like it back then. But life, as it tends to do, began testing the structure we'd built. My promotion came first, a good thing in theory. Longer hours, more responsibility. I came home later. Missed dinners. She told me it was fine. We're building a future, she said. Then came her licensing exam. Night classes twice a week. Study groups. She spent hours hunched over textbooks, scribbling notes, her brow furrowed in concentration. I made myself useful. Groceries. Laundry. Meals reheated in the microwave. It's just a season, we said. We'll get through it. And we did. Sort of. But something had shifted, quietly, like the slow turning of a tide. At first, it was small. A kiss on the cheek instead of the lips when I left for work. Laughter that didn't quite reach her eyes. Late nights where she stayed up long after I went to bed, scrolling through her phone. I chalked it up to exhaustion. One evening, I came home earlier than usual. The house was quiet except for the hum of the dishwasher. I found Emily curled on the couch, her face lit by the glow of her phone. She didn't notice me at first. I watched as a smile crossed her face, the kind of unguarded smile I hadn't seen directed at me in weeks. Hey, I said. She startled, clutching the phone to her chest. Oh, you scared me. What's so funny? She slipped the phone into her hoodie pocket. Just a meme. You wouldn't get it. Once, we'd shared everything. Jokes. Frustrations. Dreams about the house we'd buy next or the kids we might have someday. Now, there was a corner of her world that didn't have room for me. Still, I convinced myself it was nothing. A phase. Everyone warned me that marriage had its seasons, that sometimes you weathered storms before the sky cleared again. But the sky didn't clear. The notes stopped appearing. Conversations became practical exchanges about bills, schedules, and groceries. Our touch grew hesitant, like we were both afraid to break something fragile between us. One Saturday night, I cooked her favorite chicken piccata with extra capers. We sat across from each other at the table. How was your day? I asked. She shrugged. Same. Anything interesting happen with the kids at school? Not really. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, thumbed a quick reply, and smiled, that same private smile. I didn't ask who it was. I just watched. Later that night, as we got ready for bed, I reached out, resting my hand on her waist. She tensed. I'm exhausted, she whispered, pulling away. I rolled onto my back, staring at the ceiling fan as it spun in lazy circles. The space between us felt like an ocean. That's when the thought came, uninvited but undeniable. I don't know when she stopped wanting me. It wasn't anger I felt. Not yet. Just a quiet, hollow wonder. Like realizing the seasons had changed and you hadn't noticed. And beneath that, beneath the ache and the confusion, a seed of something else took root. Resolve. Part 2. They say it's the little things that unravel a marriage. It wasn't a dramatic revelation or a late-night confession that started to wear at the seams between Emily and me. It was the small changes. The faint, almost imperceptible shifts that, on their own, could be dismissed. But stacked together, they became impossible to ignore. It began with missed connections. We used to text during the day, little check-ins, jokes, reminders of dinner plans. But the texts dwindled until days passed in silence. I'd send a message mid-morning. Hope your meeting goes well. Hours later, if at all, she'd reply, thanks. Busy day. Even her wording had changed. Short, neutral, detached. I chalked it up to stress. Her school was dealing with budget cuts. More students. more paperwork. But stress didn't explain the other things. I started noticing missed invitations. Emily had once been eager for me to attend events at her school, the occasional fundraiser or open house where I'd mingle with teachers and parents, proud to be at her side. But now, those invitations stopped coming. One night, she mentioned a charity banquet in passing. I might stay late Thursday, she said, slipping off her shoes at the door. We've got the annual banquet. I asked. The staff and some donors. It's nothing fancy, but it had been fancy the year before. And I had been there. Thursday came. She left wearing a black dress I didn't recognize. Elegant. Sophisticated. She barely made eye contact when I told her she looked beautiful. You should have told me sooner, I said. I could have cleared my schedule. I didn't think you'd want to go. Her tone was light, but there was finality beneath it. She didn't come home until after midnight. I found the banquet program days later, tucked into the pocket of her work bag. 2 drink vouchers inside. One used. One not. Another time, while cleaning the living room, I came across a folded piece of paper wedged between the couch cushions. My name was on the front, in her handwriting. James, it began. I don't know how to say this without hurting you. I'm scared. Scared that the person I love is becoming a stranger. I'm scared of what that means for us. For me, there was no date, no signature, no ending. My pulse hammered as I held the note. Had she written it weeks ago? Days ago? Had she ever planned to give it to me at all? I slid it back into the couch. I wasn't ready to ask. Not yet. Then there were the changes in how we touched. Emily had always reached for my hand in quiet moments, brushed my shoulder as she passed by, leaned into me during movies. Now, her touches were absent or careful, as though physical contact might startle us both. One evening, I tried to close the distance. We sat on the couch, watching a show neither of us cared about. I reached for her hand. She withdrew before I could even hold it. Sorry, she said quickly. Just tired. That word had become her shield. Tired. Always tired. When I leaned in to kiss her, she angled her face so it landed on her cheek. I didn't push, but the silences between us deepened. Once, I asked if she wanted to take a weekend away. Just the 2 of us. She smiled, a polite, tight smile. That sounds nice. Maybe when work settles down. The way she said it, I knew the trip would never happen. Her phone, once an afterthought in our evenings together, had become another wall. It was always within reach, always face down. Notifications came and went, and she would glance at them when she thought I wasn't looking. One night, while she was in the shower, it buzzed on the kitchen counter. I glanced at the screen. Thanks for today. I needed that. No name. Just a number. I didn't unlock the phone. I didn't ask. I wasn't ready to cross that line, not yet. Instead, I gave her the benefit of the doubt. Or maybe I gave myself the comfort of denial. Even my gestures of affection had started to feel one-sided. I came home late from work once, carrying flowers from the corner shop. A simple bouquet. No anniversary. No special occasion. Just because I wanted to remind us both what we were trying to hold on to. She thanked me. Set the flowers in a vase by the window. 2 days later, they wilted. I watched as the petals browned and drooped. She never refreshed the water or moved them from their spot. By the 3rd day, she threw them away without a word. The most telling sign came on a rainy Sunday afternoon. We were sorting through an old storage box in the closet. A chore we'd often turned into a game, laughing at ancient clothes, cringing at forgotten mementos. At the bottom of the box, I found a small velvet pouch. I knew it instantly. The locket I'd given her on our first anniversary. Inside, there should have been a tiny picture of us. But when I opened it, the photo was gone. Just the empty clasp remained. I said softly, holding it out. She paused, her expression guarded. Oh, I must have taken it out when the chain broke and forgot to put it back. Her explanation came too quickly, too rehearsed. I nodded like I believed her. But something inside me hardened. The Emily I had married would have noticed the missing photo immediately. Would have apologized. Would have cared. That night, as she slept beside me, her back turned, the space between us wide and cold, I lay awake staring at the ceiling fan spinning in slow, hypnotic circles. In another life, I would have reached for her. Would have asked what was wrong. Would have promised to fix whatever was broken. But I wasn't sure it could be fixed. And I wasn't sure it was still mine to repair. In the quiet darkness, I finally admitted the thought I had been suppressing for weeks. It's worse than I dared imagine. Part 3. By the time October arrived, the collapse wasn't creeping anymore. It stood fully in the light, bold and unapologetic. The silences at the dinner table no longer felt like pauses. They were barricades. Emily and I sat across from each other most evenings in a ritual that had become mechanical. I'd ask about her day. She'd answer with single sentences. I stopped asking questions that deserved more. Once, a neighbor's child knocked a glass over during a cookout, and the shatter startled us all. Emily flinched like she'd been struck. I watched her gather the broken pieces, head down, avoiding my eyes. It wasn't just fear in her reaction. It was guilt, but not the kind she could speak aloud. Her absences stretched. "Work is crazy," she'd say. "The district's short-staffed." Or, "Kelly from the counseling team is going through a rough patch, so I'm covering extra shifts." I knew the names. I knew the excuses. I also knew what time she left each morning and how late she returned. One evening, I looked up from my laptop as she came through the door after 10. She dropped her bag with a thud and froze when she saw me awake. "You didn't text," I said. Her eyes darted to the floor. "I didn't want to wake you. I wasn't asleep." She shrugged out of her coat and moved toward the stairs without another word. No kiss. No explanation. No warmth. I watched her climb, each step an echo of how far we drifted. The next week, while gathering laundry, I found her journal tucked beneath a stack of folded sweaters. Emily had never hidden it before. She'd even shared entries with me once, a lifetime ago. I told myself not to open it. Then I did. I'm afraid he'll hate me, but I'm more afraid he'll stop trying. I don't know how to bridge the gap I've created. The guilt is suffocating. He deserves someone better. Someone whole. My throat tightened. There was no mention of specifics. No mention of another man. But the implications bled through every line. She knew. She saw the distance. And instead of pulling closer, she'd let it grow until it consumed us. The next morning, I didn't bring it up. I didn't slam the journal on the kitchen table or demand answers. I didn't want another conversation filled with deflections and polite lies. I just watched her. And for the first time, I wasn't looking for the woman I married. I was observing the stranger who had taken her place. That day marked a change in me. I stopped trying. I no longer suggested weekend plans or sent midday texts to check in. If she left dishes in the sink, I left them there. If laundry piled up, I ignored it. When she sighed heavily at the growing mess, I said nothing. One Friday, she texted mid-afternoon, "Late tonight." School board meeting ran over. I didn't reply. Instead, I stayed late at work, accepted a colleague's invitation for drinks, and didn't rush home. For the first time in years, I talked to people who remembered the man I was before marriage had ground me down into a caretaker and a question mark. When I got home past 11, the house was dark. Emily was already asleep, or pretending to be. I didn't wake her. The next few weeks followed the same pattern. I reclaimed parts of myself. I returned to the gym. I reconnected with old friends who had long stopped inviting me out because I'd always said no. I started volunteering with a weekend hiking group for at-risk teens, something I'd wanted to do for years but had put off because Emily might need me. She noticed. I saw it in the puzzled glances she cast when I mentioned plans that didn't include her. When I stopped offering to drive her to work on rainy mornings. When I no longer waited up for her, or asked where she'd been, or even flinched when she mentioned staying late again. One Sunday morning, she hovered in the kitchen doorway while I packed a small duffel. "You going somewhere?" she asked. "Yeah. Overnight retreat with the hiking group. Teaching navigation." "Oh." She tucked her hands into her sleeves. "You didn't mention it." "I don't mention everything anymore." Her mouth opened, then closed. That night, when I returned, she was waiting at the dining table, her journal open in front of her. "I think we should talk," she said. I looked at the journal. "No," I replied gently. "I think we've talked enough." Her shoulders sagged. "James?" "If you're too tired for me," I said, keeping my voice steady, "then I'll let you rest alone." Her eyes welled, but I stood, grabbed my bag, and headed upstairs to the guest room where I'd already moved half my things. Not because I wanted to punish her, but because for the first time in years, I understood that saving myself wasn't cruelty. It was necessity. Part 4. When something breaks slowly, it doesn't shatter. It bends, stretches, thins out until you barely feel it giving way. That's what had happened to me. Until now. I woke one morning, the weight I'd carried for months, years, felt lighter. Not because it had lifted on its own, because I had finally set it down. The day I moved into the guest room was not a dramatic moment. No shouting. No threats. Just quiet resolve. I placed half my clothes into the closet across the hall and shut the door behind me. It wasn't just about sleeping elsewhere. It was a declaration. I would no longer beg for what should be freely given. The next step was simple. I stopped initiating everything. No more planning date nights or initiating conversations. I didn't attempt touches that would only be avoided or politely brushed aside. I stopped monitoring her late nights or asking who she was texting. I wouldn't play detective or counselor anymore. I would not chase her. I reclaimed my own life. The gym, once a neglected part of my schedule, became a daily sanctuary. I woke early, pulled on workout clothes before the sun rose, and returned just as Emily stirred. She noticed, but said nothing at first. Up early again, she asked one morning. Always, I replied. The second part of my reconstruction came in re-establishing connections beyond our marriage. Friends I had drifted from over the years, guys I used to hike with, college buddies who'd long stopped inviting me out, got phone calls. I joined a weekend hiking group that mentored at-risk teens, something I'd put off for years. The house reflected the change. I no longer cooked for both of us. I prepared my own meals. If laundry sat unfolded, I let it sit. If the garbage overflowed, I ignored it. Emily tried to fill the vacuum I left. She cooked small dinners, folded my laundry, and left it outside the guest room, even asked if I needed rides on rainy days. She lingered in doorways when I was home, hovering as if proximity alone might pull us back together. But the deeper conversation, the one that mattered, never came. She still avoided it. The old Emily might have pleaded. She might have offered apologies, or at least explanations. This version of her tried to resume routines without repairing the damage. Not good enough. One Friday evening, she texted, "Want to grab dinner?" My treat. I stared at the message. I no longer felt that sick hope in my stomach. Already have plans. That was true. I'd accepted a last-minute invite to grab drinks with colleagues. When I arrived home late that night, I found the dining table set for two. The good plates. Cloth napkins. A single candle. She stood beside the table, forcing a smile. I thought we could have dinner together. Like old times. I already ate, I said evenly. Her shoulders sagged. She opened her mouth but said nothing. In the past, I would have backpedaled, offered to sit down, maybe have dessert with her. I didn't. My time wasn't a consolation prize anymore. As the weeks went by, she began noticing the gaps she couldn't explain away. I no longer asked where she was going or when she'd be home. I no longer reminded her of anniversaries or weekend plans. My phone was no longer an open book. I didn't volunteer stories about my day, my thoughts, or my schedule. One Sunday morning, she found me at the kitchen counter reviewing trail maps for an overnight retreat with the hiking group. "You're going somewhere?" she asked, puzzled. "Navigation training." I mentioned it. "I don't remember. I didn't think you'd be interested." That answer silenced her. When I returned from the retreat the next evening, she was waiting at the dining table again, her journal open in front of her. "I think we should talk," she said softly. I shook my head. "We've talked enough. James, I'm not angry, but I'm done doing this alone. If you're too tired for me, then I'll let you rest alone." Her eyes welled, but no words came. That night, she didn't follow me to the guest room. In bed, for the first time in years, the quiet didn't feel like punishment. It felt like space. Space I had made for myself. Not for us. For me. And in that space, something unexpected was taking root. Strength. Part 5. By the time winter set in, the wreckage was undeniable. Our marriage wasn't dying. It was already dead. What remained was debris, silent routines, mechanical greetings, and a house divided not by walls but by absence. But absence had become my teacher. I used to believe love required holding on at all costs. That staying meant strength and leaving meant weakness. I know better now. It started with simple disciplines. The gym at dawn. Weekend hiking retreats. I threw myself into the mentorship program with the hiking group, finding a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. Watching those kids society had written off, learn to navigate difficult trails and harder lives reminded me what it meant to fight for something real. I found a therapist, not a couples counselor. For me. Because for the first time, I wasn't trying to fix us. I was trying to rebuild me. Emily noticed the difference. How could she not? The man who once waited at the door for her excuses no longer asked where she'd been. The man who bent himself into knots to make her comfortable now left space between us she couldn't bridge with small gestures or polite apologies. She tried. Little things. Dinner invitations. Folded laundry outside my guest room door. Occasional texts like the ones we used to send during our honeymoon phase. I didn't respond with cruelty. I responded with distance. Because I was no longer bargaining for scraps. One Saturday, she found me packing for a weekend in the mountains. "Can we please talk before you go?" Her voice trembled. I paused, but didn't stop folding gear. Talk about what? She swallowed hard. About us. I can't. I can't keep doing this. You started doing this, I said evenly. You created the distance. Her eyes filled. I know. I've been so scared. I shut you out. I thought I could fix it quietly, but it just made things worse. It did. I want to try therapy. Real therapy. And if we can't fix this, at least I'll know I tried. For a long time, I said nothing. My hands rested on the edge of the duffel. If you're serious, I finally replied, it has to be on my terms. Anything. We set boundaries. Real ones. Weekly check-ins. Full honesty. And if I see even a hint of you withdrawing again, it's over. She nodded quickly, almost desperate. Agreed. But in my heart, I knew something she hadn't realized yet. This wasn't a rescue mission anymore. It was a negotiation of terms for closure. We began therapy the next week. To her credit, Emily didn't flinch under the weight of my honesty. I told the therapist everything, the lies of omission, the withdrawn affections, the night I found the letter she'd never given me, the slow erosion of trust. Emily admitted to emotional neglect, fear of confrontation, the desire to control the narrative by distancing herself rather than face the reality that she'd failed as a partner. There were tears, humiliation, raw confessions. But for all the emotional weight, something became clear after a few sessions. I wasn't in mourning anymore. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even hopeful for reconciliation. I was free. The therapy sessions became less about saving the marriage and more about untangling our lives with dignity. We agreed to sell the house come spring. She would rent a nearby condo. I'd already scoped out a smaller place near the trailheads I frequented. We even set rules for the transition. No romantic entanglements until we were legally separated. Full transparency about financial moves. Weekly check-ins still, but now to discuss logistics, not feelings. Emily tried once, during a particularly quiet car ride, to reach for my hand. I drew it back gently. No. She nodded, tears in her eyes. She was learning what I already knew. Some bridges, once burned, aren't rebuilt. They become memorials. In early April, the house went on the market. It sold in 2 weeks. The night before closing, I stood alone in what had been our bedroom. The walls were bare. The scent of fresh paint lingered. Once, I would have stood there mourning what was lost. Instead, I smiled. Not because it didn't hurt, but because pain had become proof of how much stronger I'd become. On my last night in that house, I texted Emily. We tried. We failed. But I refused to be defined by that failure. She responded simply, thank you. When I locked the door for the final time, I felt no grief, only resolve. People have mistaken my silence for surrender. They thought love would fade me into the shadows, make me smaller, weaker, desperate. They were wrong. They thought love would fade me. They mistook my retreat for defeat. I returned stronger, forged by absence, unbreakable. The end.